Have you ever sacrificed everything for someone you loved, only to watch another person take all the credit? Imagine sitting at your own father's celebration after giving him one of your kidneys, only to hear your mother raise a glass to someone who never made a single sacrifice. And just when you think the humiliation is over, your father quietly slips you a folded napkin with 4 chilling words that change everything. Stay with me, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about patience, truth, and the kind of revenge that destroys, lies without ever raising a fist. And if you've ever been underestimated, falsely accused, or watched someone else steal the credit for your sacrifice, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. The folded napkin felt strangely heavy in my hand, not because of the paper itself, but because somehow, instinctively, I knew my life had just split into 2 parts. Everything before those 4 words, and everything after. I stood frozen in my mother's dining room in the upscale Memorial neighborhood of Houston. The smell of roasted steak, fresh bread, and expensive wine filled the air, but suddenly, none of it mattered. The room was alive with laughter. Crystal glasses clinked, relatives smiled. Someone in the background was recording the family dinner on a phone. Everyone looked happy. Everyone, except me. My name is Nathan Carter. I'm 34 years old. 9 weeks earlier, surgeons had removed one of my healthy kidneys so my father wouldn't die waiting for a donor. I still couldn't sleep comfortably on my left side. The surgical scars still burned whenever I twisted too quickly. Every cough reminded me that a piece of me now lived inside another human being. My father. And yet, as I stood there holding that napkin, I had never felt more alone. My wife, Emily, quietly squeezed my knee beneath the dining table. She knew me better than anyone. She recognized the tiny twitch in my jaw, the slight tightening of my fists, the dangerous silence that always came before I did something I might regret. Nathan. She whispered my name softly. Just my name. Nothing else. She wasn't trying to stop me. She was trying to save me. Across the table sat my younger brother Ryan, 31 years old. Designer watch, tailored navy suit, perfect haircut. The confident smile of a man convinced the entire world adored him. Behind him hung a giant banner covered in glittering gold letters. Thank you for saving Dad. People kept glancing toward him, smiling, nodding proudly, like he had performed some incredible miracle. His wife, Lauren, was practically glowing with pride as she adjusted the decorations she'd obviously spent hours preparing. Meanwhile, my 16-year-old daughter Sophie sat quietly beside me. Unlike everyone else, she wasn't smiling. She kept staring at the folded napkin in my hand, then at me, then at Grandpa. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. I unfolded the napkin. Only 4 words. We received a report. That was it. No explanation. No signature. Nothing else. I looked at my father. Dad. My voice barely escaped my throat. What report? He didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his eyes. His weathered hands trembled against the edge of the table. This was the same man who had spent 40 years pouring concrete under the brutal Texas sun. The same man who once stitched his own hand shut after a construction accident because he refused to miss work. Fear had never lived inside him. Until now. Not here, he whispered. We'll talk later. I blinked. You wrote this on a napkin. Still nothing. Before he could speak again, my mother stepped forward. Elegant dress. Perfect makeup. Wine glass raised high. Nathan, she said sharply. Please don't ruin tonight. I slowly looked toward her. Ruin what? The celebration. What celebration? She sighed dramatically. The family is finally together. I looked around the room, then back at the giant banner behind Ryan. The celebration for him? Nobody answered. Ryan casually shrugged. I don't know anything about any report. He leaned back in his chair with practiced innocence. I just organized the fundraiser. People nodded approvingly. It raised over $40,000. More applause. I felt something cold spread through my chest. You organized donations, I said quietly. I gave Dad an organ. Silence. Complete silence. Even the children stopped eating. My mother's smile disappeared. We're not comparing sacrifices. I laughed. A short, empty, almost broken laugh. That's exactly what you're doing. I looked directly at Ryan. Tell me something. When Dad was lying in that hospital bed, wondering if he'd survive, I paused. Where were you? Ryan's smile faltered for only a second before returning. I was helping in my own way. Helping. That word echoed inside my head. Helping. While I spent weeks recovering from major surgery. While Emily barely slept because she was terrified something would go wrong. While my daughter cried every night she visited me in the hospital. Helping. I folded the napkin carefully. Slipped it into my shirt pocket. Looked my father in the eyes one last time. He still couldn't meet my gaze. That hurt more than the surgery ever had. Without saying another word, I stood up, turned around, and walked out of the house. Behind me, the celebration continued, but I had no idea that the little napkin in my pocket was only the first piece of a lie so enormous it would destroy my brother's entire life. The drive home was almost completely silent. Rain tapped softly against the windshield as I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. Every bump in the road reminded me of the surgery. A sharp pull burned beneath the scar on my left side, a permanent reminder that a part of me now lived inside my father. No one spoke for nearly 15 minutes. Finally, my daughter Sophie broke the silence. Dad. Her voice trembled. Uncle Ryan lied, didn't he? I looked at her in the rearview mirror. I don't know yet. But you think he did? I didn't answer. Sometimes silence tells the truth better than words. Emily reached across the center console and gently rested her hand on mine. I've never seen your father look at you like that. Neither have I. The words came out hollow. For 34 years my father had been my hero. He taught me how to throw a baseball, how to rebuild an engine, how to keep my promises. Most importantly, he taught me that a man's word was worth more than money. So why couldn't he look me in the eyes tonight? That question followed me all the way home. Sleep never came. At 2:30 in the morning I sat alone on the back porch, wrapped in an old hoodie despite the warm Texas air. The neighborhood was quiet. Sprinklers hissed across perfectly trimmed lawns. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train sounded its lonely horn. I unfolded the napkin again. We received a report. Just 4 words. No explanation. No accusation. Yet somehow they carried enough weight to erase everything I had done. Emily stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of coffee. I figured you weren't sleeping. I wasn't. She handed me one. Talk to me. I stared into the dark yard. You know what hurts? The toast? I shook my head. No. The banner? Again I shook my head. What hurts is that Dad believed something about me before asking me if it was true. Emily stayed quiet. She knew I wasn't finished. I would have walked through fire for that man. I literally gave him one of my organs. My own mother looked at me tonight like I was some kind of criminal. I swallowed hard. How does that happen? Emily squeezed my shoulder. It happens because somebody poisoned the room before you walked into it. Those words stayed with me. Somebody poisoned the room. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand my family. Dad Richard Carter was never rich. He spent 40 years pouring concrete across Houston. Summer after summer, 100-degree heat, bleeding hands, broken knees. He believed hard work solved almost everything. Mom Linda loved appearances. Perfect house, perfect holidays, perfect family photographs. If strangers thought we were happy, that was good enough for her. Then there was Ryan, my younger brother, the golden child, not because he worked harder, because he talked better. Ryan could sell ice to a man living in Alaska. People loved him within 5 minutes. He always knew exactly what people wanted to hear. Teachers adored him. Neighbors praised him. Extended family bragged about him. Meanwhile, I was the dependable one. The son people called whenever something actually needed to be done. Need help moving? Call Nathan. Dad's truck broke down? Nathan will fix it. Grandma needs groceries? Nathan's already on the way. Nobody celebrated dependable people. They simply expected them. And eventually, you start expecting it too. Everything changed 14 months earlier. Dad collapsed at work. Kidney failure. Complete. 3 dialysis treatments every week. 4 hours each session. Watching the strongest man I'd ever known become weaker every month was torture. His skin turned pale. His hands trembled. His muscles disappeared. He stopped laughing. One afternoon, our entire family sat inside a tiny hospital consultation room. The transplant coordinator explained everything. A living donor gives your father the highest chance of survival. Then came the difficult part. His blood type makes finding a donor extremely difficult. The room became silent. Everyone looked at the floor. Everyone, except me. I'll do it. The coordinator smiled. We'll need testing. When can we start? Ryan checked his phone. I've got meetings all week. Mom nodded sympathetically. He's incredibly busy. Busy. Funny how some people are always busy when sacrifice is required. The testing took weeks. Blood work, scans, psychological evaluations. More paperwork than I thought possible. Finally, the call came. You match. Perfectly. I remember sitting in my truck staring at the steering wheel. Terrified, not of dying, of leaving Emily and Sophie without me if something went wrong. That night Emily found me sitting in the garage. You don't have to do this. I know. No one would blame you. I know. She knelt beside me. So why are you crying? Because for the first time I admitted the truth. I'm scared. Emily wrapped both arms around me. I know. What if something happens? What if Sophie grows up without a father? She looked directly into my eyes. And what if your father dies because no one stepped forward? That answered everything. The surgery lasted nearly 6 hours. When I woke up, pain exploded through my body. It felt as though someone had ripped my entire side apart. Maybe they had. Machines beeped steadily. IV tubes covered both arms. I could barely breathe without agony. Then I heard a familiar voice. Daddy? Sophie. Standing beside my hospital bed. Trying not to cry. Trying so hard to be brave. Emily stood behind her with swollen eyes. You scared us. I managed a weak smile. I'm still here. Sophie carefully hugged my shoulder, avoiding the bandages. I love you. I love you more. Those words became my medicine. Dad recovered beautifully. Doctors called the transplant a complete success. The new kidney worked immediately. For the first time in over a year, he smiled. I thought the nightmare was over. I had no idea. It had only just begun. Meanwhile, somewhere behind the scenes, my brother Ryan was quietly building a lie so carefully crafted that it would soon turn my greatest sacrifice into the weapon he planned to use against me. The weeks after that dinner felt stranger than recovering from surgery. Physical pain made sense. You knew why it hurt. You knew it would eventually heal. But betrayal? That was different. It sat inside your chest like broken glass. Every memory became sharp. Every family photo became a question. Every silence became another wound. 9 weeks had passed since my kidney transplant. The stitches had dissolved. The scars had faded from angry red to pale pink. But every morning when I looked in the mirror, I touched the mark on my side and asked myself the same question. Was it worth it? Every single time the answer was yes. I'd save my father's life again without hesitation. What I wouldn't do again was trust everyone sitting around that dinner table. Ryan sent exactly one text message after the party. Hope you're doing okay. Family stuff is complicated. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No mention of the toast. No mention of the mysterious report. Just 12 empty words. I stared at the message for nearly a minute before deleting it. Emily watched me from across the kitchen. You're not replying? I shook my head. What would I even say? She nodded. Sometimes silence says more. I've already given him enough words. Mom never called. Not once. Neither did Ryan. Only Dad reached out, but not with words. Every Tuesday and Friday morning I still drove him to his follow-up appointments. No matter what had happened, he was still my father. The first ride was painfully quiet. The truck engine hummed. Country music played softly through the speakers. Neither of us spoke for almost 20 minutes. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. The doctors say I'm healing well. That's good. Another silence. They're impressed. I'm glad. Nothing more. It felt like driving with a stranger. Emily couldn't understand it. You keep helping them. They don't deserve you. This isn't about them. Then, what is it about? I looked toward the garage where my old toolbox sat. When I was 12, Dad taught me something. What? He said. A good man keeps his word even when everyone else breaks theirs. I promised I'd help him recover. I'm keeping my promise. Emily smiled sadly. Sometimes I hate how good you are. So do I. One Thursday afternoon, while Dad was with his nephrologist, I sat alone in the transplant clinic waiting room. Hospitals all smell the same. Disinfectant, coffee, fear families sat together, speaking quietly. A little girl colored in a picture book. An elderly man slept in a wheelchair. Life and death existed only a few feet apart. Nathan? I looked up. It was Angela Brooks, one of the transplant nurses who had cared for both Dad and me. She smiled warmly before sitting beside me. You look stronger. Trying. Still sore? Some days. She nodded knowingly. Living donors understood pain differently. Not because they were sick, but because they chose it. Angela hesitated. There was something I've been wanting to ask you. Sure, she lowered her voice. You don't have to answer. Go ahead. She glanced toward the hallway to make sure no one was listening. A complaint was filed against the transplant program. I frowned. What kind of complaint? She looked uncomfortable. An ethics complaint. My stomach tightened. It happened around the time of your father's surgery. I felt something shift inside me. What did it say? Angela took a slow breath. I probably shouldn't even be telling you this. Please, it claimed. She paused. That a family member had pressured the patient into accepting a kidney donation for financial reasons. For a second, I honestly thought I'd heard her wrong. I'm sorry, what? The complaint suggested the donor wanted access to fundraiser money. I blinked. Donor? She nodded. The donor. My mouth suddenly felt dry. You mean? She finished the sentence for me. You? The world stopped moving. Voices around me disappeared. The waiting room blurred. Someone had actually accused me of donating my kidney for money. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. Who would believe something that insane? Angela watched my face carefully. I didn't believe it. What? You never acted like someone motivated by money. You acted like a son trying to save his father. I swallowed hard. Who filed it? I honestly don't know. It was anonymous. Anonymous, of course it was. Cowards rarely signed their names. After Dad finished his appointment, I drove him home. This time I couldn't stop looking at him. Did he know? Was that why he couldn't meet my eyes? Did he actually believe I'd sold part of my body? When we reached his house, he opened the truck door. Nathan. Yeah? He hesitated, then quietly said, Thank you for today. He stepped out before I could answer. I watched him walk toward the front door. Older, slower, weaker. The kidney I'd given him was keeping him alive. Yet somehow, someone had convinced him I had done it for money. That evening I couldn't sit still. Years of working as an insurance fraud investigator had taught me something important. People lie. Numbers don't. If there really was a complaint, there had to be a reason. Someone benefited. Someone always benefited. I opened my laptop, typed in the fundraiser Ryan had proudly bragged about during dinner. There it was. Still active. Still collecting donations. Total raised, $43,287. I frowned. Dad's surgery had happened weeks ago. Why was the fundraiser still running? I kept scrolling. Then something caught my attention. The money hadn't been distributed yet. Not $1. That made absolutely no sense. The surgery was over. Insurance had already paid most of the bills. So where was all that money? A strange feeling crept over me. Not anger, not fear. Something colder. The feeling I always got whenever I uncovered fraud at work. The feeling that told me someone had made a mistake. And mistakes leave evidence. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen. For the first time since that humiliating dinner, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about facts. Because facts don't shout. They don't manipulate. They don't need applause. They simply wait for someone patient enough to uncover them. And I had just found the first thread. Now, it was time to see how far it unraveled. I spent the next 3 days doing something I hadn't done since my days investigating fraudulent insurance claims. I stopped thinking like a son, and I started thinking like an investigator. When emotions take over, people miss details. Facts don't care how hurt you are. Facts simply wait for someone willing to look closely enough. So I did exactly that. The first thing I wanted to know was simple. How much money had actually been needed? Not how much Ryan claimed. Not how much people believed. The real number. I called Memorial Medical Center's billing department. After confirming my identity as both Richard Carter's emergency contact and living donor, the representative emailed me an itemized statement. I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator. Every hospital bill, every dialysis treatment, every surgery, every medication, every follow-up appointment. Insurance had covered almost everything. The family's total out-of-pocket responsibility, $11,842. I read the number again, then opened the fundraiser page. Total raised, $43,287. I grabbed my calculator again. 43,000 minus 11,000 left more than $31,000. $31,000. Money donated by kind strangers who believed they were helping save my father's life. Money that was still sitting somewhere. Money Ryan controlled. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, the dinner started making sense. Emily walked into the kitchen carrying groceries. She immediately noticed my expression. What happened? I turned the laptop toward her. Look, she read the figures twice, then slowly looked back at me. That's impossible. I checked the hospital statement. And? The numbers match. She whispered, so where's the rest? I don't know. Yet I wasn't interested in making accusations. Not without proof. Ryan had fooled everyone once already. I wasn't going to give him another opportunity. Instead, I began digging. The fundraiser page contained dozens of updates Ryan had posted over the previous year. Photos of Dad in the hospital, pictures of dialysis treatments, messages thanking donors, comments promising transparency. It looked perfect. Too perfect. Then, one update caught my eye. It included a screenshot confirming where donation payouts were being deposited. Most people would have ignored it. I didn't. The account receiving the donations wasn't listed under our father's name. It belonged to Ryan Carter. My stomach tightened. I called an old acquaintance, Daniel Harris. We'd graduated high school together. Over the years, he'd become a forensic accountant, specializing in financial fraud. If anyone understood money trails, it was Daniel. After explaining the situation, he listened quietly. Finally, he said, I can't access private banking records. I know. But if the fundraiser was connected to a personal account instead of a registered charity, there may already be enough public information. What kind? Business filings, lawsuits, liens, debt records. People leave footprints when they're desperate. He paused. Send me everything. 2 days later, my phone rang. Daniel. His voice sounded different, not curious. Concerned, Nathan? You sitting down? I am now. I found something. My pulse quickened. What? Your brother's marketing company. What about it? It hasn't been doing well. How bad? Very bad. He continued. 8 months ago, Ryan took out a small business loan, $14,000. I frowned. That's not unusual. No, but 3 months later, a supplier filed a lien against his company for unpaid invoices. How much? Just over $9,000. I stared at the wall. So, his business was already drowning in debt before your father's transplant? Daniel sighed. That's what the records suggest. I slowly closed my eyes. Everything suddenly lined up. The fundraiser, the missing money, the anonymous ethics complaint, the dinner toast, the mysterious report. None of it had been random. It had been planned. That evening I told Emily everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, she folded her arms. So let me get this straight. Your brother was drowning in debt. Yes, he organized a fundraiser. Yes, he controlled over $40,000. Yes, he accused you of donating your kidney for money, so no one would question where the fundraiser money actually went. I nodded. Emily's face hardened. I've never hated anyone. Until now. Anger surged through me. Not the explosive kind. The dangerous kind. Cold, patient, controlled. The kind that waits. I wanted to drive straight to Ryan's house. Throw every document across his dining room table. Demand answers. But years of investigating fraud had taught me one lesson above all others. Never confront a liar before you have every piece of evidence. Corner a guilty man too early, and he'll invent another lie. Ryan was good at lying. Too good. No, this had to be airtight, so I waited. Life continued as though nothing had changed. Every Tuesday I still picked Dad up for his medical appointments. Every Friday I drove him home afterward. The silence between us slowly became less painful. One morning while we waited at a red light, Dad suddenly spoke. You never asked me. I glanced over. Asked what? The report. I smiled faintly. No. Why? Because I already know who I am. He stared out the windshield. You think I'll tell you someday? I think, I said quietly. The truth has a way of introducing itself. For the first time in weeks, my father looked at me. Really looked at me. And I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Guilt. Heavy, crushing guilt. He wasn't just hiding something. He was carrying it. And whatever he knew, it was destroying him from the inside. I had no idea that within days, the hospital itself would uncover evidence that would expose Ryan's entire scheme. And when that happened, the toast, the fundraiser, the missing money, and even the folded napkin would finally make perfect sense. Some people think revenge begins the moment you strike back. They're wrong. Real revenge begins the moment you stop acting out of anger and start letting the truth do the work for you. For nearly 2 months, I said nothing. I didn't accuse Ryan. I didn't tell my relatives what I had discovered. I didn't post cryptic messages online. I didn't even tell my father. Instead, I kept collecting facts. Because facts don't panic. Facts don't exaggerate. Facts simply wait for the right moment. And that moment finally arrived on a quiet Thursday morning. Dad was inside his routine transplant follow-up appointment. I sat alone in the familiar waiting room, flipping absent-mindedly through an old sports magazine I hadn't actually read. Hospitals have a strange rhythm. Monitors beep. Shoes squeak against polished floors. Families whisper prayers they hope no one else hears. I'd become strangely comfortable there, not because I liked hospitals, because they'd become part of my life. Nathan? I looked up. Angela Brooks stood in front of me again, but this time she wasn't smiling. She glanced down both ends of the hallway before sitting beside me. Her expression alone told me something had changed. I probably shouldn't be telling you this. I gave a tired smile. You always start with that. She almost laughed. I know. Then her face became serious again. The ethics investigation. My heartbeat quickened. It's no longer just about the complaint. I leaned forward. What happened? Angela lowered her voice. Hospital compliance found another problem. What kind? Someone requested reimbursement documents for your father's medical expenses. So? The numbers didn't match. I frowned. They requested invoices for over $40,000. But your father's actual remaining balance wasn't even close to that. Every muscle in my body tightened. So someone was trying to justify where fundraiser money went. She nodded slowly. Exactly. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. Everything I'd suspected, everything I'd quietly pieced together, was now being discovered independently. Not by me, by the hospital. That mattered. Because if I exposed Ryan, people could accuse me of acting out of revenge. But if the hospital uncovered everything on its own, the truth became impossible to dismiss. Angela folded her hands. Compliance opened a formal financial review. They're tracing every document connected to the ethics complaint. I swallowed. Do they know who submitted it? They're getting close. That afternoon I drove Dad home. The silence inside the truck felt different. Not awkward. Heavy. As if both of us knew something enormous was approaching. Halfway home, Dad quietly spoke. Nathan. Yeah? I owe you. I glanced toward him. You don't owe me anything. Yes, his voice cracked. I do. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to know what he knew. But something stopped me. If the investigation was almost complete, the answers would come soon enough. That evening, Emily found me sitting alone on the back porch. She handed me a glass of iced tea. You look calmer. I am. That's surprising. I smiled. I've spent weeks wanting to confront Ryan. And now I don't need to. She looked confused. What changed? I leaned back in the chair. When someone builds a lie, they spend every day protecting it. The bigger the lie becomes, the heavier it gets. And eventually, it collapses under its own weight. Emily smiled. So you're waiting? I'm not waiting. I corrected gently. I'm watching. 3 days later, everything changed. It was nearly 7 in the evening when my phone rang. The caller ID surprised me. Mom. She hadn't called since the disastrous family dinner. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. Emily noticed my hesitation. Answer it. I took a deep breath. Hello? Her voice sounded nothing like I remembered. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the authority. She sounded small. Nathan, can you come over tonight? I remained silent. It's important. What happened? A long pause. Then she whispered 4 words. Your father knows everything. Those words sent chills through my entire body. Everything? Did she mean everything? I'll be there. 40 minutes later, Emily, Sophie, and I pulled into my parents' driveway. The house looked exactly the same. The porch lights glowed softly. Flower beds lined the walkway. Wind chimes gently swayed in the evening breeze. But one thing was different. Ryan's car wasn't there. Neither was Lauren's. No decorations, no music, no laughter, no banner. The house felt empty, like the celebration had never happened. Dad opened the front door himself. For the first time since the transplant, he looked directly into my eyes. No fear, no hesitation, only shame. Come in, son. The words hit harder than I expected. Inside, everyone sat in the living room. Mom, Dad, Emily, Sophie, and on the coffee table, a thick manila folder. Dad slowly pushed it toward me. I should have believed you. His voice trembled. I should have defended you. I opened the folder. The first page carried the hospital's official letterhead. Internal Ethics Investigation Final Findings. I began reading. Every sentence made my heart beat faster. The anonymous complaint against me had been proven completely false. Then I reached the final paragraph. My hands froze. The investigation had traced the complaint, not just to a person, but to an internet address registered to Carter Creative Solutions, Ryan's company. I read it again, then a third time. The room disappeared around me. Only one sentence remained. The complaint originated from Ryan Carter's business account. Dad lowered his head. It was him. Mom quietly began crying. He accused you to protect himself. My chest felt strangely light. Not because I was happy. Because after weeks of doubt, I finally knew. I hadn't imagined any of it. Ryan hadn't just stolen credit. He had tried to destroy my reputation, using the greatest sacrifice I had ever made. But, as painful as that realization was, the hospital's report wasn't even the worst thing inside the folder. The next document would expose where every missing dollar had gone, and it would bring Ryan's carefully constructed life crashing down forever. I stared at the folder resting in my lap. For weeks, I'd imagined this moment 100 different ways. I imagined shouting, demanding answers, watching Ryan confess. Instead, the room was almost silent. The only sound was the old grandfather clock in the hallway, ticking away each second like it had all the time in the world. Tick, tick, tick. The truth had finally arrived, and it didn't need to yell. My father leaned forward in his chair. His hands trembled as though they belonged to a much older man. Nathan, I failed you. His voice cracked before he could continue. I should have trusted my own son. I looked at him for a long moment. The man sitting across from me wasn't just recovering from kidney failure. He was carrying something even heavier. Regret. I read the report 3 days ago, he admitted quietly. I've barely slept since. Mom lowered her face into her hands. I wanted to believe there had been some mistake. There was. I replied softly. But it wasn't mine. No one argued. Because no one could. Dad slowly opened another section of the folder. This came from the hospital's financial compliance office. Inside were bank statements, fundraiser payout records, and copies of withdrawal summaries. Every page told the same story. Donation after donation had entered the fundraiser. Thousands of dollars given by strangers, church members, neighbors, former co-workers, people who believed they were helping save a man's life. Then came the withdrawals. Large transfers, smaller transfers, business payments, credit card balances, loan repayments. None of them, not one, matched my father's medical bills. I felt my stomach tighten. Dad looked at me. The investigators estimate, he paused, that over $30,000 never went toward my treatment. Emily quietly whispered, "Oh my God." Mom began crying harder. I never knew. I swear I never knew. I believed her. Not because she deserved the benefit of the doubt, but because the look on her face couldn't be faked. She had spent months defending Ryan. Now she realized she had been defending the very person who betrayed all of us. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. When the hospital contacted us, they asked questions I couldn't answer. They already had the evidence. They just wanted confirmation. He swallowed. They told me Ryan submitted the ethics complaint. They also told me he requested copies of my medical bills so he could justify where the fundraiser money had gone. The room fell silent again. I closed the folder. Slowly, carefully, like closing the lid on a coffin. What happened to Ryan? I finally asked. Mom answered first. We confronted him. And? He denied everything. At first. Dad nodded. He blamed accounting mistakes. He blamed the fundraiser website. He blamed the bank. He blamed everyone except himself. I wasn't surprised. People like Ryan never accepted responsibility. Not until there was nowhere left to run. What happened then? Dad's jaw tightened. I asked him one question. What question? He looked directly into my eyes. Did your brother give me his kidney? Or did you? Mom's tears started flowing again. Dad continued. He couldn't answer. He just stood there. For almost a minute. And then he walked out. Has he contacted you since? Dad slowly shook his head. No. The next morning, Ryan's carefully built life began collapsing. The fundraising platform froze the remaining donations. Donors received official notifications that the account was under review. The hospital permanently documented the false ethics complaint. The bank launched its own investigation after suspicious transfers were reported. One by one, every institution Ryan had tried to manipulate turned against him. Not because of me, because of evidence. Truth doesn't care how charming you are. Truth doesn't care how convincing your smile is. Truth only asks one question. Can you prove it? Ryan couldn't. 3 weeks later, news spread through the family faster than I expected. Aunt Melissa called. Then Uncle Greg. Then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Every conversation began the same way. We just found out. I'm so sorry. We had no idea. I thanked them politely. But apologies no longer mattered. The damage had already been done. No amount of regret could give me back those 9 weeks of humiliation. Or erase the image of my mother raising a glass to the wrong son. A month later, Ryan's marketing company officially shut its doors. Clients disappeared. Suppliers demanded payment. Creditors called daily. The same community that once praised him now whispered whenever his name came up. Ironically, the reputation he'd tried to steal from me was the very thing he lost forever. One evening, Dad asked me to drive him to another follow-up appointment. This time, the truck ride felt different. Peaceful. Halfway there, he broke the silence. You know, I've spent my whole life believing strength meant never admitting you were wrong. He looked out the window. I was wrong. I believed the son who talked the best, when I should have believed the son who quietly showed up. His words hit me harder than I expected. Then, he reached across the center console, placed his weathered hand over mine, and whispered, Every morning I wake up, because your kidney is still doing its job. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that gift. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But peace. Because I finally understood something. The greatest revenge wasn't watching Ryan lose everything. The greatest revenge was knowing I never had to become like him to win. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. It contained only one sentence. Ryan wants to see you, one last time. I stared at the screen. Emily looked over from the passenger seat. Are you going? I locked the phone without replying. Because some people deserve a second chance. And some people deserve to live with the consequences of the first. There's an old saying my father used to tell me when I was a boy. Character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when nobody is watching. For months, I had wondered if those words still meant anything. After everything Ryan had done, after watching my own mother believe a lie, after giving away one of my kidneys only to be treated like a criminal, I wasn't sure anymore. But life has a strange way of answering questions. Sometimes, it answers them quietly. 3 days after my mother's text, she called again. Nathan, Ryan wants to apologize. I stood in my garage looking at the old pickup truck I'd driven to every one of Dad's appointments. The truck that had carried my father to dialysis. The truck that had carried me home after surgery. The truck that had carried me away from the worst family dinner of my life. I closed my eyes. What exactly does he want? He wants to explain. I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because I finally understood something. People don't ask for the chance to explain until they run out of excuses. I don't need an explanation. He says he'll repay everything. That's between him and the people he stole from. He says he misses his brother. I looked toward the driveway where Emily and Sophie were planting flowers together. For months, those two had quietly carried me through the darkest season of my life. My real family had never left. I hope one day he becomes the man he pretended to be, but I won't be the one helping him get there. I gently ended the call. Weeks turned into months. The investigations continued. The fundraising platform permanently closed Ryan's campaign. Every remaining dollar was returned to the donors. Several contributors filed fraud complaints after learning what had happened. His business accounts were audited. Creditors came calling. One client after another walked away. Within the year, Carter Creative Solutions no longer existed. Not because I destroyed it, because lies eventually collect interest, and sooner or later, the bill comes due. Dad's health improved faster than anyone expected. Every appointment brought better news. The kidney function remained excellent. His strength slowly returned. One crisp autumn morning he surprised me. Instead of waiting for me to open his truck door, he walked around the front himself. Slowly, carefully, but proudly. I think, he smiled, it's time I started driving myself again. I laughed. You sure? You've already carried enough for one lifetime. For the first time since the transplant, I hugged him. Not because everything had been forgiven, but because some moments are bigger than pain. As we pulled apart, he looked directly into my eyes. I'll never be able to repay what you gave me. I smiled. You already have. How? You finally believed the truth. His eyes filled with tears. So did mine. My relationship with Mom never returned to what it once was. She called often. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I didn't. Trust, once broken, never returns exactly the way it was. She apologized more than once. Real apologies. Not excuses. Not justifications. But remorse. One afternoon she quietly asked, "What can I do to fix this?" I thought for a long moment before answering. You can't erase what happened, but you can make sure it never happens again. What do you mean? The next time someone accuses the person who's always shown up for you, ask questions first. Believe evidence before emotion. And never confuse the loudest voice in the room with the most honest one. She cried. I think those words hurt more than anything else I'd ever said. As for Ryan, I never saw him again. Not because I hated him, because there was nothing left to say. His punishment didn't come from me. It came from every decision he'd made. Every lie. Every stolen dollar. Every attempt to destroy another person's reputation. People often imagine revenge as shouting, humiliation, or public victory. They're wrong. The greatest revenge is living a life so honest that the people who betrayed you are forced to watch their own lies collapse without your help. Almost a year later, I opened my bedside drawer. Inside was the folded napkin, still perfectly preserved. The same 4 words stared back at me. We received a report. For months I had kept it as a reminder of betrayal. That night, I realized it meant something completely different. Without that napkin, I would have never questioned the fundraiser. Without questioning the fundraiser, I would have never uncovered the missing money. Without uncovering the money, Ryan would have continued fooling everyone. The very thing meant to destroy me became the first domino that destroyed his lies. I smiled, folded the napkin one last time, then walked outside. Emily was sitting on the porch swing. Sophie, now preparing for college, was laughing while showing her mother pictures on her phone. They looked up as I stepped outside. Emily smiled. You okay? I looked at the 2 people who had never doubted me for a single second. The people who believed me before there was proof. The people who stood beside me when everyone else stepped away. I am now. I wrapped my arm around Emily. Sophie leaned against my shoulder. The evening sun painted the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. For the first time in a very long while, I felt complete. Not because justice had been served, not because Ryan had lost everything, but because I finally understood that integrity doesn't need applause. Sacrifice doesn't require recognition. And love, real love, never needs a toast to prove it's real. Sometimes, the greatest victories are the quiet ones. The ones where you walk away with your dignity, your peace, and the certainty that you never became the kind of person who hurt you. That was the only revenge I ever truly needed. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories of betrayal, justice, resilience, and redemption. And now, tell us in the comments, if you were in Nathan's shoes, would you have forgiven your brother or walked away forever? Your story might inspire someone else. Until next time, remember, the truth may walk slowly, but it never arrives too late.